What's up, students? Welcome to this brief primary source walkthrough for a really interesting political cartoon that relates to one of the essay questions that I am asking you for our latest written assignment. Now, if you're here and you're not in my class, welcome. Thanks for showing up. I hope this is interesting for you. Uh, You'll have to forgive the informal background behind me. This is my office and my home office where I do a lot of my recording, and I've built out a bit of a game room. You can check out one of my other videos if you want a full walkthrough of what's in here and what I collect and all that sort of stuff. But what we're here to do today is we are going to be examining this political cartoon, which I'm just going to call the American River Ganges because that's the title given at the bottom. And we're going to do a couple things to make this political cartoon, number one, understandable. And then number two, I want to make you comfortable using it as a piece of evidence to answer the question about the conflicts between native born Americans and immigrants during the early parts of the 19th century, the 1800s. So, the first thing before we look at any of this cartoon is we need to get some context under our belt. Context is super important. Don't discount it because it's going to be the historical context that makes a primary source, whether written or visual, a bit more comprehensible. If we're just looking at a random image and we don't know the context for that image, it's really difficult for us to make any sense out of it. Like, imagine seeing a meme of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and not knowing who either of those people are or why they matter, why people would want to make a meme or political cartoon about them. You have to know who they are, and they're standing in popular culture in the United States and all of that to really make any sort of sense about it. So, where do we find our context? Well, if you are in my class, you can find the context in two places. Number one, check your lecture notes. We talked about immigration and nativism a few weeks ago, and we talked about the different kinds of conflict that led to tension between the native born and the immigrant, especially the Irish immigrant. Also, if you're in my class, you have the textbook. So if we go into Give Me Liberty right here and we look over on the left side, what we'll notice is a tab called Market Society. And if we go and we click on Market Society, it's going to bring us to this particular section of the textbook, and we can scroll down and we can check out, oh, there's this section about Irish and German newcomers. If we scroll down a little bit more past the Voices for Freedom, we have a bit on the rise of nativism. And given that our question is about nativism during, oh, the conflict between the native born and the immigrant in the early parts of the 19th century, this can give us a pretty good sense of what some of the tension was about. And what I want you to notice here in the secondary source is that, let's take a look here. During the 1840s and 1850s, Archbishop John Hughes of New York City made the church a more aggressive institution. This is the Catholic Church. Hughes condemned the use of Protestant King James Bible, of the Protestant King James Bible in New York City's public schools, pressed Catholic parents to send their children to an expanding network of parochial schools, and sought government funding to pay for them. he aggressively sought to win converts from Protestantism. In the eyes of many Protestants, the newly assertive activities of the Catholic Church raised a question of national identity. The question, who is an American and who is its close relative? What kinds of immigrants should the country welcome? Catholicism, they feared, threatened American institutions and American freedom. So, one of the main complaints of nativists about immigrants, particularly from Ireland, is that they are Catholic. And Americans, the native born in particular, who identify as Protestant, don't really consider Catholics to be all that American because they're worried that the Catholic person will serve the Pope and Catholicism before they will serve the United States and its interests. And you can read a little bit more about that anti Catholic feeling if you have access to this textbook. Now, that's our context. We know a couple things. We know, number one, that there are a lot of immigrants from Europe coming over to the United States, and a lot of them are Irish. We know that the Irish tend to be Catholic. And we also know that one of the nativist critiques of Irish immigration is anxiety about Catholicism. We know those three things. So before we even look at this political cartoon, what we have to realize is that context matters in terms of how we're going to interpret this. So let's go to the cartoon, and here it is. And I want us to do a quick little exercise. And what I want you to do is take a minute, pause the video, take a minute, and just jot down a couple of things that you see. It doesn't have to be right, it doesn't have to be wrong. It just needs to be something that you can see. So go ahead and pause that video for just a second. Really, pause it. You should. Definitely pause it. Okay. Hopefully you paused the video, you wrote something down, and you're thinking through this cartoon, or at least you're starting to notice some things. Now, when we look at an image, what we tend to see is we tend to see the things that are right in front of us first. I mean, that makes sense, right? Like, I'm going to notice something that's right in front of me probably before I notice what's behind it. Unless it's an awkward social situation, which, well, why don't we leave that where it is? All right, so the two things that we notice right away is if we are looking more to the right side of the cartoon, we see a group of children huddled behind a man. And we see some other children behind them over here who are on the beach and they're staying up against the wall. Over here on the left, we see these alligator-looking beasts. But I want you to take a closer look, because look right here, right under the jaws, and you'll notice a face. And you'll notice that all of the alligators that you can see, at least in the foreground here, all have these faces. And then imagine tipping this picture up vertically, and you'll not see the jaws right here as jaws of an alligator, but you'll see it as a hat on top of this man's head. And if you know anything about church wear, especially Catholic church wear, you'll identify this as a bishop's mitre. That is the hat that the bishop wears when executing his public office. You might see the cross on the back of the robe here. You can see the hands. And so, what we have on this beach of the American River Ganges is we have these bishop alligators who are coming ashore and attacking or seeming to be about to prey upon the children of the United States. How do we know that this is the United States? Couple ways. Number one, if we look in the background, look at this right there, US public school. We also see up here an American flag that's hung upside down, which means that there is distress. The title also helps us too. We know that this is happening in the United States. Now, I want us to look up here in the left-hand corner. And what do we see? We see these two men who are leading a figure over here to the right, which is a gallows. And a gallows is where people are hanged. So we see the support posts here and we see the noose dangling. The implication is that these two men are leading this figure all the way out to the noose. That this figure, whomever she is going to be hanged. Now, do we know 100% for sure who this is? No. But there are a couple of clues that might give us a couple of hints. So we see this kind of flowing robe and the long hair, a sort of crown. And it reminds me of Lady Liberty, to be completely honest. So the argument that's being made here is that these two men, these two immigrants, who are in league with the Catholic Church, alligator bishops over here, are leading Lady Liberty to be hanged and die. Meanwhile, these other immigrant dudes are lowering more and more children onto the shore to be consumed by these Catholic alligator bishops. And if you're not 100% sure that these are Catholic bishops, let's take a look here in the background. It's hard to see, but if you have access to this political cartoon and you can zoom in, what you'll notice right on the front is it says Roman Catholic. Over here, it says political, this says church, and that's a different cartoon entirely that we're not going to look at this time. I don't know why it's doing that. But look here. It says the political Roman Catholic Church. So this is, if you know Rome, you know that this is St. Peter's Basilica. You can also tell by the flags being flown there with the Vatican crest on them. So the Roman Catholic Church is looming here in the background. And if we dig a little bit deep here, the word political matters quite a bit because nativists are arguing that the Roman Catholic Church isn't really religion, it's a political ideology, which is interesting. Think about that in a modern context for a little while. Let's see what you come up with. In any event, so the critique here that our cartoonist is making is that immigrants are victimizing children via the Catholic Church. Okay, the Catholic Church is coming upon the shore to devour America's children and to turn them into something un-American. Our defender here matters a little bit too. I'm not sure if I can zoom in and it will actually capture the zoom in on OBS, but take a look at this guy real quick. And I know it's blurry, but this is a book, right? And if we look closely, we can make out a couple letters. So that's a B, that's an E, that's an L, excuse me, and this is an E. What book can you immediately think of that ends in BLE? Well, it's the Bible. So this says the Holy Bible. So the only thing protecting America's children, again, if we zoom out, is the Protestant minister armed with the Holy Bible to beat back these Catholic bishops and to save our children. That's a lot of information that we can take from just this one political cartoon. And if we look back at our context, go back to our browser window here, that jives with a lot of what is being said by the textbook in this section on market society. That anti-Catholicism is a major part of the critique against Irish immigrants. So, as far as using this political cartoon as a piece of evidence in your essay, what drove the conflict between the so-called native born and the immigrant, especially the Irish, you could say a couple things like religious tension or nativist anti-Catholic views, those sorts of things, and this can be a piece of evidence. You can say, for example, in the cartoon The American River Ganges, you can describe you can give a brief description, say it does this and this and this, um, and you can explain how that jives with anti-Catholic sentiments at the time. Now, how you do that specifically is up to you and your argument. But what I'm hoping is that this gives you at least some sort of guide for how you might use a political cartoon to build an argument. It's a good piece of evidence that you should feel ready and able to deploy should you decide to answer that question. So that's where we're going to leave the video. If you have questions about it, couple things. If you're my student, email me. Come talk to me after class. Come to an office hours meeting. Let's chat. Happy to help you and walk you through a few more things. Now, if you're not one of my students, but you have a question, leave a comment. I'm not always the best at checking the comments, but if you leave a comment and you have a question, I'll try to get back to you. I'll try to answer them as best that I can. And if you liked this video and you thought it was helpful, you can tell me that too. Like, subscribe, do all those other YouTube things. And hopefully you'll find another video that I have equally as helpful. So, I'm Professor Hevert. I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourselves and enjoy history. See you later.